I was listening to the story about, it was a story of a family in Washington, and the little boy called the Bigfoot the Cowboy Man. And he had, apparently it had made an effort to steal this kid. And it hit me. My children were in that playpen behind me with nothing but a mosquito net over them. It could have crept up behind me and taken both of my children, and I wouldn't have known.
Father just got like a Mustang or something from Wyoming, okay? He had it out in the corral because he couldn't put it in the barn in the stalls with the other horses. It would kick and made all the other horses nervous. Had a Seminole Indian working the horse trying to break it every day. So they had it out in the corral. This skunk ape snuck up behind this horse and grabbed it on its hind quarters. This particular horse kicks out, jumps over the corral, runs into the pasture, to get away. At this point, the rancher's out there just blasted away with the 30-30. Skunk ape runs into the swamp.
I went up there one day after that, or 2 days after that. I went up there and sat in the silence up there, and I'm telling you, man, it was free. It was crazy. There was a crazy vibe up there still. I did what I could to kind of get things under control, but I told her, I said, you need to get off this property. I feel like no matter how strong you are, it's almost like standing in the ocean. You can't stand still without moving your feet. You're going to get knocked over eventually, no matter how strong, whatever. You can't withstand a barrage of weird spiritual energy.
What's up, everybody? How's it going out there? Hope everyone is doing well on this Friday evening. As you remember, guys, I told you before we were switching to Tuesday. That is still happening, but it escaped me that I had a couple left. So we got one tonight and one next week, and then we will be moving to our new slot of Tuesday evening. Do actually have a show coming up for this Tuesday, so we made that switch, so we're going to keep it in line. Got Miss Jessica Jones coming up this coming Tuesday. You'll be looking for that. Hope everyone is doing well out there tonight. If you're watching it live with us, or if you will catch it later, I certainly appreciate that. I want to ask everyone to please hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. Thank you very much for those of you that have. If you have had an encounter, I'd like to come on and share it with me, I'd love to talk to you about that. Shoot me an email to wayne@paranormalworldproductions.com. Said it many times, guys, the only way we're going to learn about these things, or the best way to learn about these things, is to talk to people that have actually witnessed them, and the people that are out there in the field doing the work to gather the information. And if you're out there doing that, or if you've had an experience and you haven't shared it, please do so. Even if it's not here, do it somewhere so we can continue to put the pieces of the puzzle together. But I'd love to have you here to come in and share your experience. Everybody, I want to ask everyone to head over to paranormalworldproductions.com. Check out the website. Show some love to all the different shows we've got over there. And Manimal Research on Facebook, my organization that I founded back in 2019, still going strong. At the Facebook group over there, if you're not a member, we invite everyone to head over there and check us out and join. We'd love to have you. All right, guys, tonight he's a documentary filmmaker from Washington. Mr. Marshall White is backstage and ready to go. If you guys have any questions at all for him, he is expecting them. So send them in. My regulars know how to do that. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it, but put those in all caps, please. This makes it a little bit easier, especially since I'm by myself tonight. Makes it a little bit easier for me to see them. So yeah, if you don't mind, put those in caps. All right, got all of that out of the way. Yeah, I can't think of anything else, any other announcements. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring Marshall on.
Hey, how you doing, Wayne?
Hey, how you doing, Marshall?
Good, man.
Good,
Yeah.
good. All the way from Washington State. What's the weather like in Washington today?
Oh, it's beautiful today. Little on the warm side, and then it kind of cooled off later. It's perfect weather to go out and do some search in the woods, not get overheated. So
Now, I've never been to Washington State. I want to go. It's a place I've always wanted to go. How far are you from Seattle?
I am a long ways from Seattle. That's over on the West Coast. I am actually in the very corner of the northeastern Washington state, right. I think the Idaho border is 40 miles from us through the woods,
Oh wow.
and the Canadian border is 12 miles north of us. We're the last stop before you cross the border. So going north.
Do you do much research up in Canada?
I actually have not been up into Canada. I don't have a passport. I've been told several times that by people who's like, yeah, I want you to go up there and document some stuff up there and do some filming. And I'm like, well, I got to get a passport first. But those things never panned out. So, I'm still hem-hawing around. So,
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know you had to have a passport to get into Canada.
well, I think you have to have a passport to fly in, but you can have an enhanced driver's license and you can drive across the border with that. So,
Very cool. Very
yeah.
cool. So, Marshall, what got you started in the subject of Bigfoot? Not necessarily, going out and looking into it, but just what piqued your interest? How long ago, and just what got you started?
Well, back in 2020, I was just, getting started doing some filmmaking locally, and a guy and his wife here in town, Bill Basson and Susie Basson, uh, they mentioned to this guy out of Spokane that, they knew a filmmaker here in town. He was looking for somebody local. He wanted to do a town hall meeting, and wanted somebody to just kind of film it and document it. And so I said, sure, I'll do it. Well, after that event, I was thinking, well, it's 50-50, either the Sasquatch exists or they don't exist. And a couple months later, I was hiking just less than a mile from here up the hill. And it was in the spring. There was some snow on the ground, in the shadow parts around the trees, and I found some large footprints. And so I went over and I did some filming of them, and actually produced a short video on it called "Filming and Hiking," near Medaling Falls, I think it was. But once I saw that, they were probably, I wear a size 8.5 boot, and I could put my boot down in it and it was swallowed by this track. And there were 3 tracks, one right after the other in a straight line. And you could see when I got down in there with the camera, and with looking with my eye, I could see toe impressions. And so it wasn't a melted away boot track. It was actually, had to be a Sasquatch or something with a large bare foot. And the stride on it was impressive. I would say probably 6 to 7 feet from one footstep to another.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was pretty big. I mean, I could lay down. I'm 5'7". I could lay down between the footprints, and barely touch them. So, I was kind of dazed and confused by it because it was like, well, maybe there really is something to this in this area, Sasquatch activity, and so I'm sitting there filming it and kind of documenting it, but I was such a newbie. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know to, put something down for comparison. I didn't have a tape measure with me, and so all I did was to do a comparison was just stick my boot into the track and film my boot in it. And I'm sitting there looking at it and I'm trying to figure out how it was like, these 3 footsteps, the 4th footstep would have landed right at the base of a pine tree where the snow was melted away, right? And but going the other direction, it was probably 40 feet and there's no tracks going across this little road there. And that one had me puzzled. So I'm sitting there thinking about what am I really seeing? Because, when Sasquatch really isn't on your radar, you're not thinking Sasquatch, but this was too weird. Anyway, I'm sitting there thinking about it and filming, and all of a sudden the phone rang, scared the crap out of me. And, I just kind of walked off talking on the phone, and, I stopped by and I looked at it on the way back on my hike. But I didn't, do anything else. At that point, I didn't know to do anything else, call anybody or anything. And
So at
so,
this point, you weren't into research at all.
no,
Were you
no.
interested in the topic of Bigfoot? Did you know what you were looking at, or at least have an idea?
Well, just because I had been to that town hall meeting and I saw some casts of footprints and I heard the testimonies of people that had seen them and experienced them, because I was there filming it. And that was the only thing that made me aware that, this is what it could be. So I think it was a month or so after I saw this footprint, I got asked to film a documentary for a guy, which was my first, Sasquatch documentary. Excuse me. And so I did that. That took me about a year to complete that project. And so after I was free from that project, I had been out on like 3 different expeditions on this thing to film this first one. And I met a bunch of the guys, became friends with them. And pretty amazing the amount of knowledge that they have. One of them, Will Ulmer from Bigfoot of Stevens County. When I had met him, he had already had over a decade of experience going out doing research, and had gathered a little bit of equipment, audio recordings, and he was always documenting with his camera and taking it with him, writing stuff down. And his mantra was, document everything. Even if you're not sure if it's a Sasquatch, even if it's a small footprint out in the middle of nowhere, document it, So I learned a lot from him. And then, of course, Bill Basson goes out and does some research and looking around. And I just ended up getting stories, and then a bunch of us started this Bigfoot festival up in Meadowing Falls. I had the idea anyway, and it's like, let's do a festival up here, So when the festival started, the first year was 2021. I was able to talk to all kinds of different people that came up and get their stories. Some amazing stories. Angelique Benham's story was actually apparently a famous BFRO, listed thing back in the day, 22 years ago. And she told this story about seeing a Sasquatch riding in a canoe on Sullivan Lake, which, is a 5-minute drive from here.
No, wait a minute. She was in the canoe, or Sasquatch was in the canoe?
She was in the canoe.
Okay.
She was in the canoe and she floated by him, paddling, having a cigarette, paddling, and came up to it. And she was trying to stay close to the shore because she didn't have a life jacket. And as she went by, she's, saying hi to this, what she thought was a hairy man. She said she thought he was an older man, but he was hairy, like maybe he had a skin disease or something. It didn't even dawn on her it was a Sasquatch. And so he didn't wave, didn't say hi, and she's thinking, oh, how rude, and so she keeps paddling away, and then then she's like, oh, wait a minute. She turns around and looks at him again, and he's getting up and he's pushing the branches and leaving. And she said his muscles were huge and his legs were huge, and she could see, the vibration of his muscles as he moved and stuff. And he was just sitting on a stump when she first approached. It was an amazing story. But then I was, I got to do a whole lot more stories from other people that I talked to, and got to hear their stories, mostly stuff up in this area. And then there was occasionally stuff, from different states. But yeah, I got totally interested in it because it's like, with this many people, and at first I was thinking, oh, well, it's just isolated incidents. But then I started, getting online and started finding out that, wait a minute, the Native Americans have been seeing these for hundreds of years.
Right.
These stories go way back. This isn't something that just started in the 50s, and so the more I got into it, more I looked into it, it was, of course, the more I got interested, and started at that point, I started going out, camping with the guys locally here in the mountains, and filming them doing what they do, so.
Well, you live in a great, great part of the country for this
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
If you don't know, I'm sure.
yeah.
You do.
There's a lot of hot spots in Washington State, and quite a few in Oregon.
And
There are.
Canada.
What's that?
Canada. You're
Oh,
right there on the line too.
oh yeah. I was just talking to somebody the other day. We had the festival here on the 17th and 18th for the third year, and this person was saying that you got to go up in Canada. You got to get your passport, or whatever, and get up there because uh, you think there's remote areas here. I mean, there's just so much forest up there where there's nobody, and lots of reports and stuff up in areas up there. So, yeah, I'd love to get up there.
Yeah, I would love the opportunity to head up in there into that part of the not
Well,
country. That part of the world.
oh yeah, it's beautiful, and if you're going to come up to Washington State, definitely you would want to consider looking at the Olympic National Forest. They
Yeah.
have what's called the Olympic Project up there, and they found some nests and things. Um, all up and down there. I've actually had people give comments on my YouTube channel, and they've told me stories about stuff over there on near Forks, where they have they have a Bigfoot festival there, and that's a real big hotspot. Mount St. Helens
Yeah.
is a huge hotspot.
Now, since let me interrupt you there, Marshall.
Yeah,
You brought up Mount St. Helens. I believe it was Mount St. Helens. Maybe you can speak to this being out there in the area. Wasn't there a story about a college professor or someone finding some bones, some deer bones that had some like gnawing in them, like some chew marks, and they did like a 5 or 6 year study on these things looking at the marks, and it showed that they were flat teeth, almost like human teeth, but the size of them, and they did all these comparisons, and whatever it was
yeah.
bipedal and like 7 feet tall or something like that.
I saw that video, and I cannot remember who it was,
I can't
but
either.
yeah, I remember seeing that, watching that video about that, and it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, they were
Um,
deer. I think they were deer bones. And I remember I was riding with my dad somewhere. We were going somewhere, listening to Sasquatch Odyssey or Sasquatch Chronicles, maybe. And the guy was on talking about it. And I looked at my dad and I said, What more proof do we need? If he really did this study and that's what they came up with, there's something almost 8 foot tall living on Mount St. Helens eating deer. What else?
mhm.
What other proof do we need?
Yeah. Well,
You know?
did you get a chance to read that story on SasquatchTheLegend.com? They have a monthly newsletter. They recently had a story about Mount St. Helens when it blew up. And, I don't remember exactly how the story goes. You'd have to go on there and read it, but it was amazing because apparently when that thing blew in 1980, uh, they were not only going around searching for people that were hiking up in the woods and finding some dead, some, wounded. They were also finding Sasquatch, some
Yeah.
dead, some wounded. And the story goes that they were actually secretly bringing them into the, camp, the medical camp, and covering them up and bringing them into medical tents and helping to healed their wounds, bandage them up. And I guess they had some military guys posted there, at their tent. And then one of the parts of the story I heard was that they actually had a Sasquatch that they had treated who was in pretty good condition. And there were people who were medics who were told to go with this Sasquatch. And this Sasquatch took a small group of people and they went up to the rock outcroppings, and he was making noises into these little holes in the outcroppings and calling for other Sasquatch to see if anybody was home. And if they were home and they were wounded, they would bring them out and they would take them and treat them.
That's amazing.
And of course, all of this was, everybody was told to keep quiet, apparently. And, I'd love to hear some stories from, people who were actually there.
Oh, I would too.
That would be amazing. But, you hear stuff like this and you go, well, I know the government's covering it up, obviously. I mean, they finally admitted to the UFOs. It's about time maybe they would kick in and admit to, Sasquatch.
Yeah.
That's
what I keep wondering myself. But look how long it took them to do it with UFOs, and I asked, I've interviewed people that follow or look into UFO, the phenomenon and everything. And I just wonder what made the government, what finally pushed them to that level, you know, and how do we get there with Sasquatch?
Yeah, I have no idea. It's definitely a mystery,
All right, let's switch gears a little bit. You mentioned earlier your YouTube channel. I'm going to pull that up and go ahead and tell everybody about it, where, the name and all that stuff, and introduce this video that we're going to be playing in the background.
Okay, sounds good. Well, my YouTube channel is Selkirk Range Sasquatch, and I basically cover Northeast Washington State, or the Selkirk Mountain Range, which is Northeast Washington and Northwest Idaho. And there's a lot of activity up here, and a lot of people are really hush hush about it, especially in the county where I live. Not a lot of people will talk about stuff that they've experienced, but lately I've had quite a few people opening up and saying, "Oh yeah, I had an experience back when I was a kid here," And this video that's playing right now, this is the abandoned military base with a Bigfoot history. And this was an expedition I went on in 2021 with Bigfoot of Stevens County's Will Ulmer, and Beans Baxter was down from Alaska camping with us that summer. And then a friend named Aaron was there also. And there were four of us. So anyway, this basically I went around filming these guys doing research in the woods. Research, I say research, but they were searching for evidence, any kind of evidence they could find. And this particular place that Will Ulmer took us to was it used to be a military Air Force base, and it's abandoned now. And so he took us up there. This scene right here is looking at Little Twin Lakes, and there were hazardous conditions, posted there, so that we were not allowed to camp there. So we ended up going to this other spot where the radar dome is. And so over there at the radar dome, they heard some knocks and distant howls while we were there. And of course, this is one of Will Ulmer's regular research locations. We're near the radar dome. He actually calls the whole area Sasquatch Alley because he believes that they travel up and down, north and south from Canada, south towards Spokane. I'm not sure how far south that goes, but there's been quite a few stories down south too. But we did the camp out here, and he told some stories. He's got some great stories. I mean, this guy's been doing this for over 12 years now. And early on, he had some extreme stories where before he even had audio recorder to record stuff. And so we got to hear him tell some of his stories. We got to search up some trails and paths. And later in this film here, they find some claw marks, real interesting uh, claw marks in a tree just up above camp from us. And of course, Will Ulmer likes to do wood knocks, and he also does some sound blasting with the app that he uses. Uh, he told me a story one time because I asked him, I was filming him. I said, "Hey, you ever use real Sasquatch sounds, and like the Sierra sounds?" And he was like, "No." He goes, "I tried it once." And he said, well, the response that he got was a very violent, angry response. And he said he's never done that
Really?
again since then.
Did he elaborate on that? Because I have done that myself a couple of times. I've done some call blasting and used the Sierra sounds,
Oh, you have?
and I guess maybe there, yeah, I have, and I guess that there wasn't any in the area because the couple of times I've tried it, I haven't really had any luck. But can you speak to what he experienced?
I actually can't. He just told me that he refuses to use the real sounds anymore after
Oh,
that
okay.
experience. He just said it was an angry sound, and it kind of freaked
Mm,
him out. So now he uses an app that
yeah,
just kind of makes monkey chatter or something.
I don't know. I think call blasting is a great tool to have, and I got mixed reviews when I talked about using the Sierra sounds because we don't know what they're saying.
Exactly.
You know, we have no idea what we're inviting when we play something like that. But I've heard of other people playing like the sounds of children laughing and a baby crying and stuff like that. I think it's kind of cruel. What do you think?
Yeah, I had the idea at one point to do the baby crying thing, but you could get in a lot of trouble with the authorities if somebody hears a baby crying in the woods and they come out there and find, you doing a hoax. And of course, think if you're the Sasquatch and you put a tent out there with a baby crying sounds in it and the Sasquatch tears into it and you come back to get your equipment, it may not be a pretty sight. Nobody likes to be deceived. So
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. So I don't know where I really stand on it. I think it's a great tool though. I mean, if you're wanting to get a response, but I didn't
Well,
mean
well,
to
he.
interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no worries, man. He, from what I understand, he basically uses it as a way to, say, "Hey, I'm over here. I'm camping."
Yeah.
It wouldn't be any different if you had a bunch of your buddies out drinking and going Yahoo and playing loud music. You're just making
Mhm.
noise to let the Sasquatch out there know that you're in the area. And the intent is not to make them angry or frustrate them or piss them off. The intent is just say, "Hey, I'm here." And this wood knocking thing, I know a lot of people are not into the wood knocking, and they don't agree with it. But he explains right here why he does this. He said, "I would rather wood knock when I'm out on the trails and at camp to draw them into my camp. I would rather meet them on my own area, have them come into my camp instead of meeting them out in the middle of nowhere in the forest. And so the part of going out in the woods and knocking as he's walking through the trails is to kind of let him know he's there, and hopefully, he's hoping that we'll follow him into camp so that he can get some recordings or some visual, video or something of him coming into camp at night. And he's had him come into his camp. He's had rocks thrown at him. He's had him walk into his camp and push on his tent. He's had them take their arms and put their arms under his tent and lift up a little bit.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, I mean, he's had some really weird experiences. That just well, honestly, a lot of them really freaked him out because you don't expect that kind of stuff. So but he's an amazing guy. Really, uh, really knowledgeable, really thorough in his research. I mean, you'll see him writing stuff down. You see him, documenting stuff on camera, and I'm sitting there filming him. And when he finds something, he's gone. Yeah, he's totally into what he's doing, totally ignoring me, the filmmaker, which is great. But then, he'll turn around, he'll go, "Hey, Marshall, are you filming?" And I'm going, "Yeah." And then he'll just cut in, he'll start telling me stuff. And one of the things he told me at one point on this expedition here was that something I didn't know was that he used to be into dentistry, and part of his job was to study bite marks on bones. And so
Huh.
he has the knowledge to be able to tell whether a bone that we found, which we did find elk bones, on this expedition, he's got the knowledge to be able to look at the bones and the teeth marks in it and tell you if it was a canine or if it was something that's, similar to a human or human. So yeah, it's real
Yeah, that,
interesting.
that kind of falls in with what we were talking about earlier with the deer bones and finding the tooth marks, and was it Mount St. Helen? Is that where it was?
Yeah, that's what you were telling me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
amazing, like how much information you can get from a bite mark. And I mean, he can probably speak to that.
oh yeah, yeah. I wish he was on here. Uh, yeah, amazing. So anyway, on that expedition, we went up into. Uh, you just have to watch it. I mean, go to Selkirk Range Sasquatch YouTube channel and watch that video. There's some amazing stories because when we were up on the radar dome, he actually had been in contact with some guys who were at the base back in the day, which is in the '60s, the early '60s when this base was open. Um, they had emailed him and told him stories. The military guys that were retired now, and apparently they had Sasquatch running around the perimeter. They had Sasquatch throwing stones, rocks and stuff. And he showed us a spot where they had come up there one winter. The whole radar dome area was closed off by the Forest Service for like 2 years. And when they finally got back up there to play paintball, they discovered this huge nest
Mm.
up in the building in the corner there. And he was describing how big it was, how wide it was, and a lot of interesting stuff, has happened up there. And then,
A
of
nest
course,
as
go ahead.
in, I believe, Sasquatch nest.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that would be the assumption, something
Yeah.
that big and uh, uh, pretty amazing. But then you're going, okay, well, you find a Sasquatch nest when you go up there, and then you're going, okay, wait a minute, the Forest Service had this closed down for 2 years. What the heck was, is this the reason why they closed it down? When they close parks, you start to ask questions.
Yeah.
When certain areas where there's Sasquatch has been seen or reported, and then suddenly that area is closed down, it makes you start asking questions. Why don't they want me to go in there? What's going on back there? Of course, they won't talk about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I pulled this up so everybody watching can see your YouTube channel. Y'all
oh,
head
awesome.
over
Yeah.
there, and follow Marshall's channel there. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you, Marshall? Do you believe the military? I assume that you believe the military is hiding it as well, since you believe the government is. How
Oh,
much do you think
yeah.
the military knows?
Well, if you talk to Beans Baxter, he was in the military, and he was in the police force up in Alaska for many, many years.
Hmm?
And he doesn't think that there's any conspiracy, that anything is being hidden. And I tend to think that it is, but at much higher levels than where Beans was. At a much what do they call that when you have a certain access to certain secrets and
Yeah, I know what you're
other
talking.
people don't? Yeah. So, but
Yeah, uh, you've mentioned Beans Baxter a couple of times, and I had Beans on. I guess it was probably a couple years ago. He does the Sasquatch podcast.
Alice Squatch podcast. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he came on and we did a show on kind of dedicated to Port Chatham.
Oh, Port
Yeah,
Chatham. Yeah.
Chatham, yeah,
Yeah.
Alaska, because he was a part of the crew that went up there and did an investigation up there, and that place is spooky as hell, man.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to go there. You
Yeah,
know.
I'm crazy. I'd like to go.
yeah.
I say that until about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. When I'm hearing crap around me, and I'm curled up in the fetal position, wondering why I'm doing this again.
Well, you got to know why I wouldn't want to go up there. Of course, been doing some research online, watching videos, and there was a guy who does some hunting, and it's not the other hunting channel you normally think of, but this guy was talking about this theory that the Sasquatch up in Alaska, especially up near Fairbanks, and the Port Chatham area, these Sasquatch creatures are more violent than the ones that we have in, say, Washington, South Canada, BC, and in Oregon. So there's this theory out there that the Sasquatch in the area where we live, in Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, up in here, they are more docile. They're more used to humans, and interactions, or at least seeing humans, than the ones up in Alaska. And for some reason, the moose are the same way. The moose up in Alaska will kill you in a heartbeat, but in my experience, by seeing moose up here and some stories that I've heard from others that live up here for a long time, is they pretty much will see you and run the other way, unless they've got a baby around.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the bears. Black bear usually it's 50-50, but usually they see you and they hightail it the other direction.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting when you talk about like the moose up in Alaska will like be aggressive and kill you, and then from where you're at they run from you. And the only possible reasons for that you would think is just the access to people.
Yeah, they're more used to seeing people. I think it was actually Beans Baxter, because I was asking him about this too. I think he was the one that was actually saying that his theory is that the ones up in Alaska, I mean, they can go for years without seeing a human being, because it's so vast, and there's very few population centers up there, compared to Washington State or Oregon. I mean, there's just tons of people down here, tons of people hiking, going up in the woods, so that was one of his theories, that maybe it's just because they're more used to years and years of seeing people in this area down here. They've learned how to deal with it and how to avoid them.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, about the moose thing, don't get me wrong. You don't want to walk around a corner on a bear or a moose and startle them, because they got the fight or flight thing going. And, if you see them at a distance and they see you at a distance, you're pretty good to, move away and hide in the bushes, which I've done that several times.
Oh, really?
I had to back off, make myself scarce. And that moose, I topped this hill. It was snowy up there. And I've been up there hiking a whole bunch of times. You know how when you hike an area, you have familiarity. You hike it enough that when something is not right, when something's different, because you're used to seeing this location. When I topped this hill, everything was fine except for there was a black thing off to my right, off the side of the road, and it was covered in snow like a rock. And immediately I went, wait a minute, that rock wasn't there before. And then the rock stood up and shook the snow off. And it ran right out into the road in front of me. And it was probably 30 yards, 40 yards from me. And I immediately got low and I started backing down the hill, and then went off to the side into the bushes. And the whole time it's sitting there stomping its feet and snorting at me. And then it decided to turn around, take off, and run the other way. Which I was like, yeehaw, man. I mean, I had a weapon with me and everything, but I didn't, want to use the weapon on a moose,
Yeah,
so
I haven't had the opportunity to ever see one in person. I don't even think I've ever seen one at a zoo. But from what I've heard from people like you and from others that have, you can't, like, their size is unbelievable.
yeah,
You can't prepare someone
yeah,
for how big they really are.
yeah, they're big and they're stealthy. You would think for something being that big, I mean, like an elk, you can hear an elk running through the woods. I mean, they're noisy as heck, but a moose, they will sneak up on you. We had a couple of them down in a creek bed below where we lived once. And I got my camera out, man. I got my camera. I'm going to film these guys. And I got just short snippets of them going between trees and they disappeared. I don't know if they laid down behind the trees or what, but I wasn't about to go over there and try to startle them. But
Yeah,
I waited for quite a while for them to pick up and keep going. But once they go into the bush, you can't hardly see them. They're pretty
we
sneaky.
we got our first question for you of the night. This is my good buddy Dr. John Baranchuk.
Oh yeah.
He is asking, how old are you? And how much does your camera equipment weigh? You must be in pretty good shape. I wondered that too. Is this stuff pretty heavy?
Well, this is my what you see in the background here. This is my current rig. I'm guessing 5 or 6 pounds, but this is the heaviest rig I've ever had. And
Huh.
I've got a neck strap on it so that I can hang it on my neck and hold it up, and then I get stability on my shots because that's a little tiny ZV-1 camera, which is like a $700-800 camera. Oh, it's a great camera, but it's so
Really?
lightweight that if you hold it like this, and I'm 61 years old, I got a little bit of too much coffee, and I'm shaking a little bit. My camera's shaking. So I've got the rig to make it more stable and pull it against my neck and hold it stable. I've also got an external monitor. There's a GoPro on there. I've got an external battery for the camera, so I don't have to change a battery in the middle of an interview every 40 minutes.
Hmm.
So every time the battery on the camera gets low, I just push a little button on the battery and it charges up the camera.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a really cool rig. It's got external microphone also. So,
Does it have
but
one of those like self-stabilizing things, or is that what you talk about when you hold it against you?
when I pull it tight against from wrapped around my neck, and let me get my hands up here where you can see them. I get my hands out there and pull that strap tight against my neck.
Mm.
Then I can move around and I get a lot more stability. But the camera also has stabilization in it. Which really helps. Somebody like your new GoPro 10s, GoPro 11s, amazing stabilization. And then, of course, in post, when I'm doing my editing, I have the ability in DaVinci Resolve to stabilize a shot. If it's way too shaky from running or moving or walking, I can actually stabilize the shot in post. But since I got this rig, I have been doing a lot less stabilization in post because, I'm able to hold it steady. You know, yeah, 61 years old. I am in very good shape for my age, I think. And of course, being a cameraman, I have to get out and get exercise early in the season. Try to go out hiking by myself or do whatever I can, hiking up hills, because my job, when I'm filming like Bill Basson and the other guys, I film from behind them, and then I will work my way ahead, being careful not to step on any Sasquatch evidence. I don't want to step on a
Mhm.
footprint or anything, so I'm always looking and know what to look for. And I go out ahead of them. I get shots from the side, get shots from the front, and as they're coming towards me, and then as they go past me, I film them, and then I gotta get up and run ahead of them again. So I'm running circles around these guys as they working their way through the woods. And if we're in a woods that are pretty thick, which we have a lot of that up here, sometimes I will take side trails and side paths off to cut them off and get ahead of them and get a shot of them walking through the woods. And it's fun. I love it. I'm in my
Yeah,
element filming.
you were. I'm gonna pull one of these other videos because when we were sharing earlier, the quality, just it, the quality looked really, really high. Like it, good quality stuff. I had Zach Hall on a few weeks ago, probably a month or so ago, and he's a cameraman for Expedition Bigfoot. And I've had him on a couple of times, and I've heard him talk about lugging around that equipment and how heavy it gets and everything. But I pull
Yeah.
this up right here, and I just don't see any different or much difference at all. And the camera, this what $700-800 camera that you're using, and how small it is to these monsters that these professional cameramen carry around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the professional guys are starting to go to the smaller cameras because the quality has gotten so much better. Um, but then there's that balance of, okay, you get a small camera, you also get shaky shots. And I've had a lot of shaky shots before I got this camera. I was using a Canon HFR 600 from 2015 until 2022, 2021. And then I got a bigger camera, and then it died on me, so I got this camera. And yeah, it's the quality of equipment and everything as far as a filmmaker goes. I mean, I wanted to get into filmmaking 20 years ago, but it's a whole different ball game now. It makes it so much easier for those who don't have a lot of money, a lot of budget, to actually afford to do something, because you can get the DaVinci software, you can get the free version for editing, and you can start out with a camera that only shoots 1920 by 1080, and in the software you can enhance it a little bit to make it sharper. It has the ability to do that if you want. And um, so
Now
uh,
you said DaVinci. Is that the editing software you use?
yeah, the editing software I use is DaVinci Resolve, and they have the free
Is it
version you can download for free, or you can pay for the studio version, which is like $300 a lifetime kind of thing,
mm.
which is great. I used to use Premiere Pro, but it kept crashing on me, and after losing so many projects, I just got pissed off, and I said, "That's it. There's got to be something better." So I went with DaVinci.
Yeah, we got another question. Got another
Yeah.
question here for you. I want to get to it before it gets away from me. But Carson asks, "Have you ever filmed something and then go back later to find it blank?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, have you?"
You mean as in like filmed something in the woods and then it wasn't there?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no. But I've had plenty of times where I thought I was recording and my camera wasn't on,
Oh,
or I had a SD card fail or something. Uh, so
yeah.
yeah.
Dr. John's asking, John Baranchuk, any new projects you're working on that you can share?
Well, right now, I just got through doing the filming of a Sasquatch festival, the Medaling Falls Bigfoot Festival here in Medaling Falls. And I did that for a group called Porta, who brings tourism up to the area. And the truth is, I also did it the first year and the second year. So um, uh, I love getting the stories when I'm out there. One of the projects that I want to do this year is, of course, go out and do some more camping. I've got plans to go camping with Bill Basson. Been invited by Will Ulmer, who you see on camera here, and to go out with him and do some more camping this summer. Um, the One of the projects I really want to work on, and I talked to a guy named Mitchell, and his mom is Angelique Benham, and they do research down in Idaho, somewhere east of Newport, and they've got some amazing stories. I was talking to Mitch at the last Bigfoot Festival, and some of the stories he was telling me was just like, oh my gosh, I got to get this on film. So that's one of the projects I want to do. Is I actually want to go talk to them. I want to film them. I want to get their stories, and I'm considering possibly doing a full on 1 hour documentary about them and the research that they're doing in the areas they're searching. So um, they're amazing people. I mean, just super, super nice. And they've been doing this for a long time. I mean, Angelique didn't get into this until, her experience of seeing that Sasquatch sitting on a stump by Sullivan Lake. After that, her interest was like, boom, oh my gosh,
Yeah, imagine.
so yeah, I mean, that's all it takes is one sighting or experience like that, and you're kind of hooked. It's you either go one way or the other. You're like, I'm peeing my pants and I am never going to talk about this, or oh my gosh, I got to find out more about this,
You're
So
absolutely right. You're absolutely
yeah.
right. We hear it all the time. It's 50-50. You go one way or the other. You're
Hmm.
terrified and you never go in the woods again. If you're a hunter, you sell every gun you own and you never go back, or it drives you to get out there more and look for them.
Yeah,
And I think it's pretty evenly split on the reactions. But John has one more question.
you bet.
Um, no, I don't know if it's one more. It's another question. Do you believe Bigfoot can sense electronics? This is a good question.
That's a great question. Uh, you know, that is just a really good question. I don't know if they can sense electronics. I've heard people say that they do, and they're very sensitive to it. I've also heard people that say that they avoid power lines. But the fact is that we've heard reports of Sasquatch running up and down power lines.
Now, I've heard several reports of
Yeah,
them hanging out in power lines. And
yeah.
as far as electronics, not only do you, I'm going to take the question a little bit further. Not do you believe that they sense it, but do you? A lot of people say that they have the ability to alter electronics. Do you think there's anything there?
I have no idea if that's true or not. I had an experience at in 2021 camping where I looked at my game camera, and at a certain point at night there was line glitches would just show up randomly. My camera doesn't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was some kind of electronic interference in there. And of course, the cameras showed nothing, which brings up the whole other subject along the lines of, electronics is does Sasquatch have the ability to see infrared on game cameras? And I think they do. Uh, Bill Bassan and I have gone out time after time after time putting up cameras. Well, we've hung them on trees on the side. He's built brackets where we hang them up and do them at an angle. And so far, we haven't caught anything. We've also strung line from one tree to another and hung the cameras down vertically and
Wow.
hung bait below it. Different types of smelling bait. We tried peanut butter. We tried everything. And we would get bears, we would get vultures, depending on the bait, skunks, rabbits, deer, of course, and but never a Sasquatch. So either we were in the wrong area, or they could see the infrared. And one of the bears took off and freaked out and ran away, and we saw it on film, on the camera. And the question is, okay, did he see the infrared? Because it's shining straight down. It's supposed to be a no glow infrared, and yet you can see a red spot on the ground. So if we can see a little bit of a red glow, where it points down and hits the ground, then it's possible the other animals see it too. And then when I was camping with some friends, they were using night vision goggles, a mono goggle.
Hmm.
And they said they could see my infrared camera glowing like crazy. And, when I looked at it with my naked eye, I didn't see a glow at all. But sure enough, that thing was glowing. And so it's like, okay, well, if the Sasquatch species they run around at night, they're nocturnal, right? They're running all through the woods. They got to have some kind of ability to see what they're doing, right? So if they have like a built-in night vision, then it would make sense that they could see the glow, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Makes
so
perfect sense.
yeah,
And the only, speaking to the can they mess with your equipment? The only believed sighting I've had was a thermal hit. I had my FLIR up in. I've talked about my sighting several times, and I'll just briefly talk about it here. But I had my FLIR camera, and before every expedition, as you do, and as every researcher does, you make sure all your equipment is fully charged and you have good
Exactly.
batteries.
Yeah.
So I did that as always, going on this expedition. It was February, I think, 2nd, because I just recently went back and looked at the picture, and it was bitterly cold. We were on a mountain in North Georgia, and it was in the low teens, around 15 for a high, I think. It was just ridiculously cold. And my thermal, like I said, I charged it. It was 100%. But when I get it out and turn it on to film this thing, I didn't have enough battery to take a video. There
Oh,
was
wow.
only enough to shoot a couple of still pictures. I would run back to my truck, charge it for 5 or 6 minutes, and come back just long enough to take one or two more pictures. I couldn't shoot video. And some people have argued, well, the cold
Yeah.
was zapping your battery and draining it. And other people are brought up, I've been in that cold before, and my battery do fine.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I don't know what was draining my battery that night, but I know I had 100% when I left the house.
Yeah. That's a really good question because I've experienced the cold thing, draining my batteries very quickly up here.
Mm.
I've also experienced the opposite, where it's 100 and something degrees, and your black camera is out in the sun, and it overheats, and the battery runs down quick. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All right, Marshall,
yeah.
we're coming up on the hour mark. Go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you. We talked about your YouTube channel. Go ahead and mention it
Yeah,
again, and
sure.
any Facebook or social media that you want to plug.
Yeah. Well, my YouTube channel is Selkirk Range Sasquatch. And on my channel, I have several films that I've done. The Abandoned Military Base with a Bigfoot History, 2022 Sasquatch Stories Marathon, Selkirk Expedition 2022, where I filmed a bunch of guys. And of course, there's Something Out There, which is a really good film. If you're interested in Native American perspective, First Nations, I would watch the Sasquatch by Tom. It's got featuring Tom Seawood and Peggy Seawood. And then, of course, on my channel, I not only do films, I do documentary videos of where people are telling me their encounters. And so I'll have a single encounter and tell that story. And one good example of that is a guy down in Oregon, or a guy who was traveling through Oregon in a truck. It's called the Oregon I-5 Report, a Bigfoot sighting. I did his single story in one video there. Of course, Selkirk Mountain Sasquatch with Bill Bassan is a documentary series. It's an ongoing series. We just keep going out, doing searches, trying to find whatever evidence that we can. And I started this year doing Selkirk Sasquatch Quest, which is me asking questions. It's me going out and attempting to do research based on what I've learned from these other guys. And just basically checking out different areas and asking questions. And, I got a lot of questions. And every time, I go out with these guys, I end up with more questions. You know how it goes.
That's how it goes.
So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
Marshall, I appreciate you taking the time to come and hang out with me this evening. I
Oh,
really
yeah, man.
appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been great.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch. Actually, I want to stay in touch because I want you to send me the link to that camera, the camera that you're talking about, because I
Oh,
want to
yeah,
check
yeah.
it out. I'm looking at upgrading and getting a better camera. So if you don't
Well,
mind,
this is a great content creator camera because you can flip the screen around. If you're just holding the camera itself, you can flip that screen around and you can put it on tripod and watch yourself, and then flip it flat or flip it out to the side if you need an angle. It shoots 20 something megapixel photos, which now I can use this camera for photos. I can use it for video. It shoots 4K. You can, if you want to do 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second, you can do that, but you got to shoot in a lower quality, like 1920 by 1080.
Yeah.
It's amazing. For that price, other cameras I was looking at $3,000 to $5,000 to get that kind
Yeah.
of quality. So
Yeah, that's exactly the price range I was thinking. When you said under $1,000, that it got my attention.
yeah, they got a new one out, the Sony ZV. I think it's the E1, but there's one. It's like a $2,000 camera. It's an upgrade from this, and it actually has changeable lenses. I mean, where you can. This one's got a fixed lens, but this newer one has the ability to put different lenses on it. Which would be great if you're out there and you want to get a long shot across the field and get a zoom in close. With a zoom lens or something. It'd be cool. So that's my next camera. I think it's the Sony ZV-E one. But
Very cool.
yeah,
All right, buddy. Again, I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
yeah, you too, buddy. Thanks, Wayne. It's great
All right.
talking with you, man.
You too. Be good.
Bye.
All right, everybody. There you have it. Appreciate everyone coming and hanging out. It took a little while to get people in here. Tiffany and I were wondering where everybody was at. None of our regulars were in. It was just her for about 5 minutes of the show, but a lot of you showed up. Some new faces. Appreciate y'all stopping by. Or I don't know if you've watched before, but commenting for the first time. I always appreciate that. Thank you guys so very much for taking the time to hang out with me tonight. Always enjoy it. I'll be back Tuesday for another episode, and then should have one more the following Friday. And yeah, they'll be moved to Tuesday after that. All right. Let's get out of here, guys. I really enjoyed this one. Guys, y'all be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and I will see you later.